Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I have a quick video today for Technique Junkies featuring this gorgeous stamp that says, "Accept what is, let go of what was, have faith in what will be." This stamp, again, is from Technique Junkies. It's called Accept What Is. It is stamp number S928. And I will have a link in the description box below for the Technique Junkies website, as well as my coupon code as a Technique Junkies design team member. So this technique is great for these Technique Junkies stamps. Technique Junkies stamps are just so beautiful, and you can create a whole bunch of cards all at once using these large stamps that they have. So what I'm doing is I am getting out my embossing ink, Versamark embossing ink, and I'm going to emboss this the stamp onto my card paper. Now the paper that I'm using is called Hammermill Premium Color Copy paper. What's wonderful about this is a universal paper that works for coloring with alcohol ink markers, blending with inks as you're going to see me do today in this video. It's great for your pan pastels. It's great for using colored pencils. You name it, it's really universal. All right, so I'm getting a nice impression here, making sure that I have plenty of Versamark down. Then I go in with some black VersaFine Clair ink. This is Nocturne. What I'm doing is just getting a nice juicy impression so that my flowers and my sentiment that goes right here with this, it's all in one. It's the flowers and the sentiment all in one stamp, are nice and inked up, because I am going to heat emboss this with black embossing powder. If you hang in and watched all of my video, I'm also going to do it with some gold embossing powder. Then I will use my Catherine Polar inks to ink these backgrounds. So it'll be a bit of an emboss resist technique. Okay, so I put my panel down on a piece of scrap paper. I dumped the black embossing powder over top. I'll put my embossing powder back in my container. Then I'll use my heat gun to emboss. As I'm recording this video, I have a hummingbird flying around my window looking in at me. I doubt that it sees me. It's looking, checking out my craft room here, wondering if there's any flowers that it can get into. Yeah, we've got flowers, but they're the paper kind. Okay, now that we have heat embossed this, we will go ahead and ink blend. I have a silicone mat that I just used to protect the surface of my craft mat. I'm going to ink blend this first panel using some Catherine Polar inks. The colors that I have selected include Party Dress, Tiki Torch, Tutti Frutti, and Tiara. And then my camera shut off. I also grabbed a couple other colors, Aquatini, Flirty Fuchsia, Something Borrowed, and Lime Ricky. But when you look at this, you'll see that I started with Party Dress, then I went to Tutti Frutti, then I went to Tiki Torch, then I went to Tiara. So that's no fun. My camera was being stupid. So I'm doing this again because I want you to see what it's like to ink blend using these foam dome blenders from scrapbook.com and the Catherine Polar inks and the Hammermill paper. It's effortless. People will ask me sometimes about ink blending because I do enjoy ink blending my backgrounds. And what are some of the things to ensure that you get a nice ink blended background? Well, you definitely want to have a good smooth paper. Hammermill paper, the uh, copy plus, I mean, premium color copy paper from Hammermill is very smooth and it's not very expensive. The 80-pound ream, I think, is only like 12 to $14 on Amazon, and you get 250 sheets. I used to always use Bristol Smooth until I discovered this Hammermill paper. Now this is my go-to paper. Don't forget to use your embossing buddy before you emboss. I am sometimes guilty of forgetting to use it. And so I'm going to go ahead and clean the stamp because I do want to heat emboss one panel with the black ink, which I already did, but I also want to heat emboss with just the clear Versamark ink and then use gold embossing powder because these warm colors in the background really do lend themselves well to gold embossing powder. So once again, we are using Versamark, then we're using VersaFine Clair. This time I did use the embossing buddy. I think that's why I am doing this again with black ink, because what you just saw me do was I forgot to use the embossing buddy first. But on this panel, I did use the embossing buddy. Okay, there's a little spot there at the top left-hand corner that I need to press a little bit harder with, so I got my stamping buddy out, or whatever it's called, my stamp glider tool, Chucky, whatever you want to call it. It's just handy to have. Okay, that by itself is beautiful. So this time I almost forgot to put embossing powder on my panel. I was having a little bit of a forgetful day. Now we can use some embossing powder. That's a black embossing powder. We will go ahead and shake the excess off on our scrap paper. Take my little fine fan brush, get rid of any extra bits of embossing powder, and then we'll go ahead and dump this back into the container. And try not to spill it all over the place, which I've done that before too, or at least some of it. We'll go ahead and grab our heat gun and melt this down. And this Hammermill paper does a fine job heat embossing and doesn't have any trouble with the heat. It's just a great paper. I can't recommend it enough. So do you remember that panel that I forgot to use the embossing buddy anti-static powder tool with? We're going to use it anyways. Let's take some chances, right? Why don't we? This is where I'm going to grab that gold embossing powder, and boy am I glad I did, because I love the way this looks. Even though there's black ink, you really can't see it. The gold embossing powder just overtakes that black ink. So the moral of the story here is use your Versamark, use your gold embossing powder, that's fine. But if you don't have your Versamark handy, if you just have your VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, go ahead and use that. It's black ink, but you can still use gold embossing powder over top of it, and it's going to turn out just fine and dandy. Okay, now that we have that embossing powder put away, we can go ahead and melt this panel. Well, we're not going to melt the panel. We're going to melt the embossing powder on the panel. And I have my little tweezers because the heat gun gets extremely hot. And I don't want to melt my skin or burn myself when I'm crafting. I'm so glad I did this. I'm so glad I didn't just, just let the ink dry and not emboss on this. Turns out really nice. Now we have 2 panels. Let's go ahead with some of the colors that I told you that I had out earlier. We'll start with Party Dress. So I think I mentioned this already, but you want to have juicy ink pads. You want to have a nice smooth paper, and these dome foam blending tools really do make ink blending easy. So you can see that I'm really not applying much pressure, and the ink is deeply saturated. That's because the ink has recently been re-inked, and the reason why this is going down so smoothly without much effort is because I'm using that nice smooth paper, and I'm also using the dome foam blending tools, which are really easy to work with. Next we have Tutti Frutti. I'm going to speed this up for the sake of time. The first color was Party Dress, and then Tutti Frutti is very close on the color wheel to Party Dress, so they blend together pretty nice. They're just like Tutti Frutti has a little bit more of an orange in it, but not much more than Party Dress. Okay, that color that I just picked up is Tiki Torch, which is your true orange, in my opinion. It's a nice orange. And then the final color is Tiara, and the Tiara is a nice golden yellow. These are from the Party Collection. I do enjoy the inks from the Party Collection because they're nice and bright. I'm using a piece of mint tape so that I don't get my finger marks all over my panel, which is about the only thing that mint tape is good for. I am not sure who paid the famous YouTubers what amount of money to say that it's the best tape ever, because it's not. It is the epitome of a low tack tape, meaning it doesn't stick. I have used it to use when I run my die cuts through my Gemini Junior. It does hold them slightly in place, but I've found that the best use is just to use it to put on my panel so that I don't get finger marks all over my ink blending. Okay, so that's a really high impact, I think, color combination. I'm super pleased with how that turned out. Well, let's do it again because it seems like it's a great color combination, and why not? So we start off with Party Dress. And then we will move on to Tutti Frutti. And then from there, we will go with Tiki Torch. And then finally, we will use Tiara. And one of the things you want to do after you do your blending is go back over it so that the lines aren't as pronounced. So you could take your last color that you blend with and then just go over the sections that you ink blended, or do something just to sort of blend it. I didn't do that on this one, or maybe I did. Yeah, so I went back over it with the colors in reverse order. That's what I did. Anything you can do to just blend those lines one last time before you're finished. If you see a line that seems to be especially pronounced, go right ahead and go over it again. These dye-based inks will dry back a little bit. They fade just a slight amount when they're dry, but they're still really high impact. This card, I used some hot pink foil in the background and hot pink cardstock. And this one with the gold embossing powder, I used gold foil in the background and a orange cardstock. So those are my cards for today. If you like it, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment and let me know what you think about this ink blending technique. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And I do a lot of giveaways. So that's one of the nice benefits of joining my subscriber list. And don't forget to check out Technique Junkies for this and lots of other beautiful stamps. Remember, there's a coupon code in my description box so that you can save 10% off your order at Technique Junkies. Thanks, everyone. Have a hopeful day. Bye-bye.